Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Recruit Military Live, where today we will be discussing ways to unlock your career magic by diving into diverse professions. My name is Gabby Petticrew, and I am joined, as always, today by my amazing co-host, Raul Torres. Good morning, Raul.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon now, depending where you're at. Hey, I wanted to just let everyone know if you're in the Dallas area. I'm actually going to go set up the event that's taking place tomorrow, 11 to 3 at AT&T Stadium. So if you're in the Dallas area, we have a huge event, probably the biggest one I've done at AT&T. I think I checked the latest number. I'm pretty sure we just went over 115 companies that are going to be present.
Yeah.
So if you are in the Dallas area, please do yourself that favor and show up. 11 to 3, veterans, spouses, dependents, everyone in the military community, come on by.
Absolutely.
Jumping right into it today. We actually have a repeat guest today. Last time he was on, he was dropping some knowledge on us. And he's actually the Assistant National Employment Director at DAV. For over 11 years, he's served in several capacities at Disabled American Veterans, DAV, guiding military community families to resources that lead them to live better, more fulfilling lives. With over 5 years of leadership experience in the U.S. Marine Corps, he understands the challenges and opportunities that our military community face in their personal and professional lives. You'll likely see him at several DAV Recruit Military job fairs right alongside us, informing military community job seekers about their entitled resources and ways they can find meaningful careers post-military. So please join us in giving a warm welcome to Jeremy Yost. Jeremy, welcome back. Appreciate you having you on, brother.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you're at. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited for today's episode because I think, as we discussed earlier, it seems to be a pretty good melting pot and culmination of a lot of previous lives where we've talked about, things to prepare for when you're transitioning out of the military or even just as a military spouse, but all the resources and planning that comes along with that. Like, what are the nuggets of knowledge and like tidbits of wisdom that everyone has? And we've kind of culminated all of that to talk about breaking into diverse career options for you. Because as we know, for a lot of us, regardless of how long you spent in the military or how long you were a military spouse for, you kind of get used to keyholing yourself into whatever that profession was, whatever that MOS was while you were active duty or, while you were a military spouse. And you feel that maybe once you get out, once you make that transition back to the civilian sector, that's what I have to stick to. It's what I know. It's what I've done for 4, 6, 8, 10, 20 years. So I have to stay in that. Or, it's just the anxiety of even making that move to a new career field that can prevent you from, jumping into a new career. So very excited to talk about, diverse career options today and how to approach those. And one of the first topics that we want to get into is really just you have to get out of your comfort zone first and foremost. You have to break that cycle of doing, whatever it is that you've been doing for however long and really approach your next career with an open mindset. And Jeremy, you have a wonderful story as a fellow devil dog, Semper Fi, going from, an infantry career to now doing what you do best. So if you want to tell us a little bit about, diverse career opportunities and how that relates to your story leaving the Marine Corps, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So when I was getting out of the Marine Corps back in 2011, I mainly tried to stay with the infantry mindset. I was going firefighter or cop, and ultimately, and luckily enough nowadays, at the time, they were not allowing us to because of my tattoos were below the shirt sleeve, which led to me having to go to a diverse, looking at other options because the tattoos made it where I couldn't stay in that same field at that time. And also with the issues that we were having back then in 2010 and 2011, where a lot of those companies like firefighters and police forces had stigmatisms against individuals that served in combat as well. So I had to look at other options. And I went completely away from what I did in the military as infantry and went to doing documentation and paperwork and helping veterans with their disability claims. And I would have never thought that I would have switched to that transition if life didn't make me change that. And luckily enough, I was able to use resources like the VA at the time, be able to use VRNE, what's called vocational rehabilitation at the time, now called Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, to be able to find a new employment that I was able to help veterans transition from that military experience and be able to help them through that process.
And if you don't mind me asking, how was that? Just because I think it's something that not a lot of veterans, especially ones from the infantry career field, like to really talk about. What was the maybe internal, mental, emotional struggle, for you in making that transition, like knowing that you were now limited because of tattoos and just how the world was at that time and the restrictions. How was that for you battling that? And then obviously, like, everything happens for a reason, but you landed where you were meant to be and now doing amazing things for the military community. But how was that for you, making that, especially coming from such a gung-ho career field?
It was very difficult because, like, I thought that was my career path. Like, that's in my mindset at the time. My career path was going from infantry to something close to it, still serving individuals, but serving in a different capacity, serving as a firefighter or a cop. And for me to be able to apply for those positions and continue to get the same responses of if it was due to my tattoos or if it was due to conditions or disabilities that I had, that they were very hesitant to hire people. It was a frustrating system. And to be able to find, and I was lucky enough to find a great counselor that was able to be like, hey, there are other ways that you can help your community and help the veterans that you served with in a different capacity. I know it's not what you did, but I can help you through that path. And I was lucky enough to find somebody. Lisa, appreciate everything that you did for me back then and hope you're continuing to help veterans as well.
That's awesome. That reminds me of my mentor, Lauren, which we're actually going to talk about later today, like what program I use, how I got in contact with her. But yeah, it's all about finding a support system as you're transitioning out. Because man, I'm remembering the time when it was my time and to transition out and the months leading to that, and just how like mentally stressing it was. And I transitioned into marketing, which is aligned essentially with what I was doing at the tail end of like my career in the Marine Corps. But man, to transition out, knowing for a fact that hey, I probably can't stay within my field. That's just extra stress added on top of what you're already feeling. So glad your transition was smooth enough where you kind of accepted it and found like programs that were able to help you transition. But I wanted to see going into the next topic is doing the work to see what you bring to the table, right? Did you, outside of some programs, what else did you do? Like, who else did you involve in your transitioning process to help you? Like, did you talk to fellow military members? Did you get viewpoints from leadership? Like, who all did you talk to leading up to your transitioning out?
So I did a lot with talking to other veterans that I served with, other Marines that I served with, and other veterans that were in the community as well. Enough, I had a few of us that were getting out at the same time that were all around the same area of Ohio, that we were able to kind of help each other through that process. And they were the ones that actually told me to go through VRNE, because before that time, I had no clue who the DAV was that I now work for. At that time, I was kind of lost in that situation. And if it wasn't for networking with individuals that I knew that got me in contact with new veterans and new employers, I would have never had that smoother transition. It would have been a lot more difficult for me if I didn't take those steps to stay connected with the community and with the individuals around me.
Absolutely. And if you're listening, I want to know, because we do these lives and get like insight from guests coming on. But hey, if you're listening, who did you talk to? Right? I kind of remember transitioning out, and sometimes you hear from leadership, we want you to stay in, we don't want you to leave. Not that they're not going to help you, they obviously do, but you do need to, ask those individuals around you, and coworkers included, like how they can help you. I don't know if you've had similar experiences, Gabby. How was your transition out?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that there's a lot of self-reflection in any capacity that needs to be done when you're making such a huge transition, especially when it comes to careers, whether staying in your career field or moving into a different career field. But having to do that work is absolutely necessary. Having to do all of that self-reflection, that internalizing, like, okay, what am I good at? And what are my areas of improvement? Getting very comfortable and honest with yourself. So that way you can approach this new chapter like rocking and rolling and ready. And a huge other aspect of that, doing more work, going a step further and having those conversations with those closest to you, with that leadership all the way, from E9 all the way down to your junior, Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen. And, having those conversations like, hey, as a leader, what did you appreciate about me most? Or what areas did you see that, you think I could have room for growth and improvement in? And getting very honest answers from those individuals, especially on your way out. You have nothing to lose at that point. So get as much information about the people that know you the best, the people that worked beside you for, 4, 6, 10, 20 years, even the ones you're not stationed with anymore, even the buddies that have gotten out. Get that vital information about yourself, because at the end of the day, even whether you're a veteran or not, a military spouse, we are our own worst critics. I feel like we may do something phenomenal, may do an absolutely amazing job at A, B, and C, but we won't admit that to ourselves. We won't gloat about ourselves. Have other people gloat for you. Having them write up letters of recommendation specifically saying that you're phenomenal at coordination and logistics or supply management or leading teams, overseas. These things matter. And honestly, when you're going through that transition, hearing that from others may give you that boost in confidence that you need. You're like, I'm really getting anxious. I'm really getting scared. I'm having to up, and I have a family to provide for after I get out of here. There's a lot of emotions and like mentalities that are going through you, and having the people closest to you that you know and trust and that know you tell you like, hey, dude, like you're going to be good. You're like freaking phenomenal at all of this. Some areas you may need to work on are A, B, and C, focus on those. So really having those conversations and keeping that network, like keeping those conversations going, staying in touch with those people. I think we constantly harp on networking and in whatever capacity that looks like, whether it's a phone call to a buddy, a text to check in, a LinkedIn message, an email, a Facebook IM, whatever it is. Keep those connections strong, because you never know how you can help that individual or they can help you later on down the road. So I know for me, when it comes to having those conversations, staying connected with people, and these conversations don't have to be focused around the professional aspect either. Many conversations with my network of veterans and military spouses is like sending funny reels and memes and like talking about the current, whatever's going on in the Marine Corps nowadays, and just keeping that conversation going, keeping it light and funny. But then when it comes down to brass tacks and, someone having an actual question, they know they can come to me because we have that level of comfort. The conversations that I had with people that led me to my first job out of the Marine Corps was, from just a fellow Marine veteran who was also in public affairs, who was now working as a civilian photographer. She ended up leaving her position in Camp Lejeune and remembered who I was because she was my photographer for family photos, and by name requested me, and I had her position just because I had a contact with her. We exchanged numbers and stayed in touch. And me staying in touch with Raul, I would never have saw his LinkedIn post about the job I'm currently in now if I hadn't made that connection on LinkedIn. All these small connections along the way, you will never know when they come back up and save your butt, or just like, oh my gosh, look at that. So yes, I have 1,000,001 stories about how, having these conversations and making and keeping these connections really have just come through like tenfold for me.
Networking, ladies and gentlemen.
Networking. And I mean, that goes into, so once you have that strong network, right, and you're keeping it going, and maybe you're getting closer to that dream job, or landing those interviews, or whether or not you're having trouble, I think the next step for us, and a good segue, is the resources. One of the things I learned when I first got to RecruitMilitary was, because I don't know about you guys, before I interviewed for my position, I'd never heard of RecruitMilitary, which meant
I think Gabby froze up. Are you still there?
I'm here. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
One of my favorite phrases is, you don't know what you don't know, right? And and especially when there's such a multitude of resources out there, you're like, oh, well, how do I know what's the right one for me, or what's the best thing for me that I utilize in this specific situation that I'm in? So can we dive more into some of our favorite resources that we've spoken about on all of the countless lives that we've had? We've heard so many, but from you both, especially given both of your transition stories, what are some resources that you feel would be most useful to our audience?
So some of the resources I didn't even know while I was in the Marine Corps. And again, that was probably a lot me not going to the education center, but you can get a lot of certifications and a lot of education done while you're in the military that doesn't come away from your GI Bill, and doesn't come away from any type of funds that you have to provide. For the most part, a lot of it, you can actually get your education and the certifications that you're needing for the next steps in your life while on active duty on your off time, and with no cost to you. And you can still use your GI Bill to even more advance that once you get off of active duty as well.
Yeah, now I'll add to that. When I was I think I was in a year and a half in to my military career, and I ended up at the education office, just trying to get to TA, tuition as assistance, trying to make it happen for myself. I think I was getting ready to deploy in like the next 6 months or so. But anyways, I found out I couldn't do it just because on the Marine Corps side, I guess the MOU, how we had it set it up at that time, didn't allow for someone that was as fresh as I was to make that happen. So if you're looking to do something like that, or maybe looking at SkillBridge at the tail end of your career, if you're within like those 180 days, those last 180 days left on your contract, make sure to reach out, obviously, to your command, but find out what your branch specifically is asking for as well, because they may differ. But other resources I use, me specifically, during my transition out, I mean, where do I start, right? I guess I'll do the mentor. I had such fantastic mentors that I can't like not bring them up. And ACP was where my favorite mentor, Lauren, just blew my mind in terms of like how she showed me how to network, essentially. Like, you kind of learn things as you're transitioning out, going to TAP and stuff, but just talking to people face to face, Zoom, just live, talking one on one will change how your perspective on like transitioning and how you see networking and a whole bunch of other things. I also use Veterati, which is kind of ACP, but like a la carte. Like, you get to choose, pick and choose like 20-30 minute conversations here and there. So from my end, my transition, I really lean on mentorship and just which also builds your network. So networking and mentorship, that was big on my end. And then at events, now as an event director, there is a resource that helps transitioning veterans kind of figure out what they want to do, especially if they're trying to get out their comfort zone and they figure out, hey, I can't be an infantryman for the rest of my life. Maybe I have to try to do something else, right? Something diverse. Career One Stop or ONET is something that I recommend um, representatives from companies that are at our job fairs that can help you out as well, just to figure out who you are and what you're looking to do, right? Just taking the skills that you already have and figure out how that translates to the civilian sector. Career One Stop is huge for that, and ONET is as well. I don't know what resources did you use, Gabby, when you were getting out, because obviously we transition at different times.
So it was a very, I would say LinkedIn was, because I had tried all of the Glassdoor. My resources were just very old school resources, because the last time I had looked for a job I was 15. I think 15, 16. And, because I joined the Marine Corps right at 17, left a few months after graduating high school, and then boom, bam, spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, and then got done, spit me out a whole new woman. And then it came to COVID. I got out the end of November 2019. So my process, a lot of things, the state of the world was very different when I had gotten out. I just had my son. And so I was trying to, tell myself that, I'm going to maybe try and be a stay-at-home mom, focus more on that, and, take some time off from the career part of my life, which was very hard for me because I'd had a job since 15 and was always in that professionally productive mind state. And then after a few months of being home, I was like, no, I'm going stir crazy. I need to have a job again. And then I started looking around January, February of 2020. And then we started to hear rumblings of everything COVID related. And then come April, May is when, that contract I had mentioned from that one contact had happened for me, which was just a straight blessing, nothing short of a miracle, especially during that time frame when I had been applying to all these jobs, doing all of the, the groundwork, literally going door to door as I did back when I was 15 and 16, and just being like, hey, here's my resume. If you go, going to banks, going to federal agencies and asking them what was the best way to apply in, because I'm a very face-to-face person.
Mm-hmm.
I hated doing things online. I'm a very much, you need to hear and see my personality and feel my energy to know that you should hire me, but it wasn't working because COVID was happening. So it was very limited. So my resources were my network, was LinkedIn, was what I ended up, finding my positions over, where I, finally landed. So that I wish I had known about organizations such as ACP and Veterati, these resources, or even RecruitMilitary. I'm sure they were still, even though with events being shut down in person, there were still things happening online and online resources. And one thing, especially here at RecruitMilitary and with partners like ACP and Veterati, we cannot stress enough the importance of having that mentor, of someone having, especially if they're coming, from a veteran perspective themselves, having going through that transition, having been in your boots, in those shoes, knowing everything you're going through, and knowing what the questions are to ask yourself or to ask you, knowing what hard conversations need to be had in order to figure out what the best next steps for you would be. So I love that you were able to experience that, Raul, and hopefully was able, as I'm sure, you've mentioned many times, was able to make that transition less stressful for you, because you had an expert in that situation that you were in.
Yeah, it's super important to, not just let stress overtake you and keep it to yourself. Like, find your network, find people around you, find people to lean on when you don't have the answers, because you're not going to have all the answers transitioning out.
Yeah. And when it comes to the veteran side, you still have opportunities, you still have ways of getting that type of education. Like I stated before, GI Bill, as we all know, if you got out after 2014, you got forever GI Bill, so it never expires. So even if you haven't used it yet, you still have those opportunities if you still have that education. The other thing is VRE, Veterans Readiness and Employment Program. If you have a disability, they will help you find employment that's not going to be hindered by the disabilities that you're currently service connected for. So it's not like if you have not applied for it, or if you might not meet the qualifications yet, you can always contact DAV. We are a free service. We can be more than happy to help you with filling out that documentation, getting that submitted in, and going through the process to help you obtain that eligibility if that's something that you're needing for your next steps on employment and your next career path as well. And one of the things when I was getting off of active duty, I wish I could go back and talk to the people that have been out of the military for a little while that because they are going to have that civilian experience that you don't have yet. And they'll be able to provide you information on things because there is an adjustment from active duty to civilian life that a lot of us don't know. And we are very nervous about it. And rightfully so. It's a completely different world when it comes to how we work in the military compared to how civilians work outside of it. So taking that time and talking to individuals that are already in that civilian sector can help you with also looking at what professions you might want to be in and what certifications or education you might want to do while you're still on active duty to help you move to that next path.
I think you hit it right on the nail when it comes to making that transition. Even if everything goes right, like especially on the career side, the professional side, everything goes smoothly and according to plan, there's still an adjustment to be made, whether that be mental, emotional. You are no longer operating in the same capacity and the same like functionality as you were in that office or whatever your office was. Mine was an actual desk behind an office. Some people's was a dirt field. Some was in a boat, so there's going to be an adjustment regardless. So utilize the resources that have the capacity to make certain areas of that transition as seamless as possible, because it's going to be an adjustment regardless of how seamless or maybe how a bit more challenging that transition can be.
100%. And hey, like I mentioned at the start of the live, use all your resources, including veteran job fairs like the Dallas one tomorrow, 11 to 3.
That one I think is the largest, if I'm not mistaken, since I've been here, the largest amount of employers that we've had, because like you mentioned yesterday, I counted 115, and I know on the day of sometimes we add more. We'll get updates like, 2 more employers are wanting to show up today. Over 115 employers are showing up to AT&T Stadium tomorrow. That is in the amount just of networking opportunities alone in that room is unfathomable, absolutely insane. So please, if you have the opportunity, even if you have a job and you have the time, the lunch period to go in there and just network, do it. Today, just to review what we've gone over, whether making that transition, especially if you're interested in looking at different career opportunities in different industries, whatever you do, don't pigeonhole yourself and limit yourself to what it is you've been doing. Whether that is something that you want to continue to explore in the civilian sector, it may look completely different and it may not be your cup of tea any longer. So definitely get out of your comfort zone and keep an open mind to trying new things. Continue those conversations that you've had with veterans, fellow active duty members, people who have been out for a while and can give you the good, the bad, the ugly, and all in between of the transition process, lessons learned from them, and then research and follow through with resources. The resources are there, we promise, and there's one more than likely for any and every situation that you've gone through or are going to go through. So, and then reach out. I think that's one of the most difficult things for veterans in our mindset, is that we feel like I can handle this myself. Like I shot guns for a living, or I traveled overseas for a living, or I led platoons of 50 men and women for a living. I can transition and find a job and do all this all on my own. I don't need to ask for help. It's okay. This is a whole new world that you're stepping into. And one thing is especially when it comes to these job fairs, because whether it's online or in person, keeping an open mind when you go to job fairs in itself, I think it's something, especially from the event director's perspective, Raul, is we'll have 115 plus employers, but you're like, oh, I only want to talk to Boeing. I'm only going to talk to Alltech. I'm only going to talk to Sonopar. You're like, and then I'm deuces, then I'm out. I got the contacts. No, you're missing out on 114 other individuals who don't even know which positions are open in which locations. You're quite literally limiting yourself. So before we wrap up, can y'all speak a little bit more, especially Jeremy, being the co-sponsor and being there for so many of these events, the advice you have for the military community just when it comes to keeping an open mind at these job fairs, at these events?
Before you answer this, Jeremy, I have a small anecdote. Jeremy is like the bouncer for these situations. When I've been on hand at career fairs, at 11 a.m., myself and Jeremy would conclude our kickoff speech to motivate the job seekers, right? 3 to 5 minutes later, I see Jeremy just, Heismaning, just stopping people in their tracks. Like, we have a lot of companies here today. I know for a fact you did not find what you're looking for by just talking to that one company over there. Make sure to make your rounds. But go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sure
there's the infantryman coming in. There's the infantry part, Jeremy. You're like, no, you're staying right here, buddy boy.
Yeah, doing you a favor. So.
Yeah, I usually tell them, hey, I'm usually the only Marine besides Raul that's there at the event. And I'm like, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to help you find an employment. So if I start seeing people leaving within 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to turn you around and send you back in there. And I've done that a few times and been able to get people jobs because they didn't talk to the people because they think they know the company. Just giving a few examples. TSA was at an event a couple months ago. Most of us think airport security, but they weren't even there hiring airport security. They were hiring nurses. And if you were a nurse, would you even go and talk to TSA? Probably not. But we actually had an individual that was that exact reason. Like, she was a nurse and she wasn't looking. She went over and talked to TSA and got a job that day and was starting on Monday in her new employment. And she was about to leave because she didn't find any positions that she thought was available. Another prime example is waste management. Waste management changed their name to WM because they were tired of individuals thinking only thing that they were hiring for was trash services. Remember, at civilian sector, government agencies, all the above, when it comes to employment, have multiple sectors to make sure that that company is profitable and make sure that company can work. So think of S1 to S4 shops. You have your HR, you have your IT, you have communications, you have marketing, you have supply, all those to make all those companies work. And don't think that you looking at diverse jobs that are not in what you did in the military makes it where everything you did in the military is not worth anything. You have that foundation, you have that background that's going to be able to help you in those management roles, going to help you with doing your job better. Most of these companies, when they are asked what they're looking for, is individuals that are willing to come to work on time and willing to learn the job. Those are prime things that we all know as military individuals that have been ingrained in us from day one. So don't think just because you're looking at other avenues that everything you've done is going out the window.
Hard skills can be taught. We're hearing more and more that these soft skills, that work ethic, that drive, that motivation, that dedication to mission accomplishment is what they need. You come with great character and a willingness and drive to get the job done, they can teach you the rest. And we're hearing more and more about that from more and more employers. So that's absolutely right, Jeremy. So when it comes to making that transition, keep an open mind, be ready to have those conversations and to network with your hopefully growing network of individuals from active duty veterans to now the civilian sector. And then do that research. Oh my gosh, do that research and utilize those resources. That's a tongue twister. And that culmination of those, I think, is a great recipe for having a successful transition, or at least easing that that challenge that comes with making that transition to the civilian sector.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much again, Jeremy, for joining us today. Absolutely jam-packed full of knowledge and resources for the military community. We greatly appreciate you having you on today, and I'm sure it will not be your last, especially with all of the knowledge and wealth you have for us.
I appreciate it. And again, if anyone is needing help with benefits, help with education, or anything that deals with VA side of the house, please contact DAV. You can go onto our website, dav.org or jobs.dav.org, and we can link you with the closest office to you to help you through that transition period. Or if you're already off of active duty, help you through the next steps of your career path.
Appreciate
you so
Jeremy.
much.
Thank you.
Right, and thank you everyone again for joining us for today's episode of Recruit Military Live, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.